Tonight's top story, Hinnamnor intensifying again in the East China Sea. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for September 4th. We're into our 6th day of code red thanks to Hinnamnor, which is now a category 2 typhoon again in the East China Sea, and 3 tropical storms in the western hemisphere. Earl, Danielle and Javier, both in the Atlantic and in the Eastern Pacific, with possibly another one on the way. In the Atlantic, it's day 96 of hurricane season. Danielle isn't moving very much and weakened a little bit since yesterday from its hurricane peak, and Earl formed late last night and is now moving along the Leeward Islands and will curve out to sea shortly. In the Eastern Pacific, Javier is passing by the Baja California Peninsula and is now starting to pull away a little bit, but a high chance system behind it near the coast of Mexico could be a significant impact to the Baja California Peninsula long term. Hinnamnor is still marauding through the western Pacific and causing significant issues around Japan. More rain being dumped onto Okinawa right now. Category 2 could still strengthen again as it approaches South Korea. And in the southern hemisphere, nothing much to note, or in the Indian Ocean northern hemisphere, just the remnants of that tropical storm that we were watching a few days ago, still persisting as it gradually gets closer to Diego Garcia. Well, let's take a look at the current satellite imagery. You'll quite clearly make out the 2 tropical storms that are out there. Danielle, which is still trying to hold on to a little bit of an eye feature, and Earl, which is a lot more blobbier and a lot more deep convection surrounding it, at least on its northern side, but its southern side is a bit bare. In the Eastern Pacific, Javier is somewhat easy to see, although you can tell that it's struggling with its moisture plume right now, located just off the coast of Baja California Sur. But its convection moving inland quite a bit over the Gulf of California as well. Let's take a look at some close-up imagery of all of these storms. This is Danielle's progress throughout the course of the last, I think it's about 6 or 8 hours, something like that. And you can see that it's gradually moved just a little bit to the west. It's got that just kind of shrimp appearance. It's not got a closed eye wall. I imagine that's some dry air intrusion that's really giving the storm that pronounced shape. There's decent convection though around it, and it will have a chance to intensify more later. This is Javier moving off towards the northwest, and I think is now safely away from the coast for tropical storm force winds. It still has them and is expected to be probably near its peak right now. Still a fairly weak storm, and will die off gradually as it turns towards the west. Lots of cloud cover though to its northeast, affecting those regions of the Gulf of California. Here's Earl right now, the southern side of it not really affecting the Leeward Islands, so that's some good news. It will stay just a little bit too far away to cause any significant impacts. Rainfall estimates, forecasts from now on are falling as well, of course, as this event progresses, now down to around 2 inches. And this is Hinnamnor, which is just over a tiny island there in Japan. I forget what the name was. It passed through Tamara, which is a small island as well in between Miyakojima and Ishigaki, just after how long ago was that now? That was about 12 hours ago, I believe, and is still gathering pace and momentum and strength as it slowly moves northwards still. Now a mid-range category 2 and possibly will become stronger soon. We'll check models in just a moment. There's the 24-hour period showing you exactly what the storm did in that time, and it still remains very large, and one might say that it's grown in size a little bit. Western side looking a little bit empty, so China shouldn't be too inconvenienced by it, but the eastern side affecting Japan, a lot of convection and a lot of rainfall potential. Wide shot of the Indian Ocean, and you can see there just some general monsoonal activity. Quite a lot of precip over India right now. Southern hemisphere there, you can still see the remnants of that tropical storm. Looking towards the Australian region, how's the weather there? Looks like that frontal system continuing to move through the barren regions of the Western Australia, and the one off the east coast is just about to loosen its grip. Elsewhere, fairly quiet in this region. Let's check sea surface temperatures and see how these storms are coping against them. Javier has left the warm sea surface temperatures, which will explain its loss of convection and its broadening out. It's not very tight at all now in its rotation. Earl is doing pretty well, sea surface temperatures pushing close to 30 degrees where it is, and Danielle is holding on to the a little bit of influence from the Gulf Stream, around 27 degrees Celsius underneath that storm right now. It's got about 2 days to possibly strengthen under those more favourable conditions. Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal has certainly been warming up quite a bit in the last few days. It's now over 30 degrees in quite a large area. The South China Sea also looking promising for a next area of interest that might form over there. And of course, where Hinnamnor is, sea surface temperatures still hanging around 30 degrees, and that will continue above 28 at least for the next day or two as it approaches South Korea. Still an enormous threat for that whole region with high rainfall estimates, but also an extremely large wind field. And that is helped by the warm sea surface temperature anomalies in the East China Sea there, quite a bit above average. The area south of it is now below average thanks to its own upwelling. The area where the other storms are as well, Javier particularly, much above average, and where Danielle is too, very far above average. I think that's about 4 degrees there. And here is the oceanic heat content in the Atlantic. Where Earl is, it's starting to get up there a little bit, but it won't take full advantage of all of that. And where Danielle is, it's just a trace. In the Western Pacific, there is still just a little bit left for Hinnamnor, but most of the buzz is in the deep tropical Philippine Sea and further out to the open waters. Let's check the models then, and first we're looking at the Atlantic, Danielle and Earl's fate. Well, you can see Danielle eventually moving off just a little bit further, both of them becoming hurricanes according to the latest GFS forecast run, but neither of them affect land, at least in that 5-day period. And at the end of that 5-day period, Earl becoming a major hurricane according to the GFS, and that will be the first of the year. National Hurricane Center also calling for a hurricane now, after they only went for a weak tropical storm yesterday when it first formed. Looking at the Eastern Pacific during this time, you can see Javier moving off there without much incident, and then you can see this next storm moving in. A very large storm and also a very powerful one is on tap according to the GFS, category 3, maybe category 4, and now a much further west track than what we were looking at yesterday, with a forecast landfall very close to where Javier is right now, running up the west coast of the Baja California Peninsula, with tropical storm force winds extending an enormous area there, right up the coast of Mexico. Western Pacific, Hinnamnor, of course, another extremely large system. GFS still thinks it will get to mid or high range Cat 3 by the time it peaks, probably on the same latitude as Shanghai, and then weakens just a little bit before reaching South Korea, and could still be a category 3 by the time it gets there. The only other category 3 to strike South Korea was Sarah in 1959, which goes to show how rare it would be if that was to transpire. And checking two other areas here, the South China Sea might get a brief little spin up. Look out for it anytime now. There it is, trying its best to spin up and strike into Vietnam. And then a Bay of Bengal system in the late part of that 5-day period. We haven't, I think we have marked it actually on Ticos, which is my personal algorithm at 10%, but the Force 13 Cat team not so far. But the GFS forecasting there that it will be a broad system and could get to a higher strength by the time it reaches India. Rainfall estimates for Hinnamnor right now, and you'll see that Perhaps just a little less for Korea, although I do note that there has been some precipitation over there already by its extended bands, so I guess that might not be the case. For Taiwan, the rain rate is starting to decrease, and we expect only probably another 4 inches there, 100 millimeters. Same for Okinawa. For the Miyakojima and Yayama Islands, maybe another 8 or 9 inches. And for Korea, we're still looking at another 10 inches, which is 250 millimeters of more rain on the way, and possibly higher. And check over in Mexico the precipitation for this region too, from that next potential cyclone, probable cyclone at this point on the forecast. It's a very high confidence forecast that it will actually form. Where it goes is a bigger question, but you can see if this forecast scenario went about rightly, then it would go right up the Baja California Peninsula and into Southern California with extremely high rain rates, and no doubt I'm sure that would cause flash flooding issues over widespread areas there, with up to 10 inches of rain even near the border, pushing 11 inches, 250 millimeters. Along the coast of Mexico south of the Baja California Peninsula, effects look like they're going to be less so because the system has actually formed a little bit further south than the expectations. Longer range, day 5 to 10, you can watch the remnants of Danielle there, much broader, moving towards Europe with weak tropical storm force winds. Earl follows it generally, still staying as a hurricane for quite a while, passing by the Azores there, delivering tropical storm force winds, and headed towards Spain there and Portugal, Iberia, with strong tropical storm force winds, but it will have turned post-tropical just about by that point that you look at the end frame of this loop. Nothing else in the picture during that time, we're pleased to tell you. And there is that hurricane once again moving through the western part of Mexico, the Baja California Peninsula, towards Los Angeles and South California, and then gradually moving offshore, following the coast a little bit as a remnant low. That would be a very interesting forecast, and certainly one that would be up there in history, but a lot of uncertainty about whether that might happen or not yet, and usually models overdo the storm when they're in that area. Indian Ocean, what happens in the longer range? Well, this storm could be another threat for India and Pakistan, which of course has been plagued by flooding, made big headlines recently, and you can see that the storm might live on there off the coast of Pakistan for quite a while and stall, I'm afraid to say. So that's in the 5 to 10 day period. No indication that's actually going to happen yet, but even this signal would suggest that maybe just a surface low or weak tropical disturbance could be tracking through that area and cause big problems. That's the serious stuff over and done with. You can take a look at the Force 13 store by scanning that barcode and taking a look at all of our products, as well as animations on request, individual and full season animations. We still have the Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt. It'll probably go rotten by the time it forms. In the silly range in the Atlantic, well, this is quite silly. Earl still has hurricane force winds by the time it reaches western France, Brittany, the United Kingdom by the later part of that run. That must be probably about 12 days out. So that would be a very impressive storm for the region with very strong winds, and would certainly have the potential to be a multi-billion-dollar disaster. That would be quite something, especially coming from the remnants of Earl and how broad it was towards those frames there as well. The Western Pacific in this time frame, we don't see anything huge, I don't think. Just towards the later part of this 16-day period, a storm brewing there near the Philippines, moving through Luzon and into the South China Sea, and then a more potent system forming in the Philippine Sea north of Yap towards the very end of that loop, day 15/16. Extremely long way out. It would suggest that the tropics are going to be a little bit quieter after Hinnamnor is gone. On this day, on September 4th, 2004, it was a very active day. Songda was taking the cake though right now as a strong category 4 there and looking very sharp. Francis though was a category 2 and about to pile into Florida on this day, and Ivan was brewing in the main development region. Hurricane Howard was moving out to sea in the eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Sarika had just formed and would remain weak, and a rare Tropical Storm Phoebe existed in the southern Indian Ocean. Yep, they are rare, but we've had one this year, and now we've had that one in 2004 as well. Makes you think otherwise, but most other years, trust me, didn't have them. Well, now in the Atlantic, the next name on the list is Fiona. In the Eastern Pacific, the next name is Kay, and in the Central Pacific, we're still waiting for Hone. In the Western Pacific now, the next name on the list is Muifa, and in the North Indian Ocean, we're still looking out for Sitrang. 53 storms have now formed this year so far, which probably still puts us on schedule for the 92 that we usually get in a year. In the Australian region, the next name is Darian down there. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, Ashley will start the season, and in the South Pacific, the next name is Harley. That's all for this day's weather bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.